Liberal backbencher Anne Sudmalis says she hopes the decision to hold a Banking Royal Commission will prevent any bad behaviour in the future. Ms Sudmalis is one of the MPs who's raised concerns about the actions of some of the banks. She says she's seen evidence of wrongdoing and hopes this Royal Commission will stop it happening again. But she's disappointed it won't be able to order compensation for affected customers. The New South Wales MP spoke to our political editor Andrew Probyn.
Anne Sudmalis, you've long had concerns about the banking sector. What are they?
Look, I've had a lot of constituents come into my office and they've expressed a great deal of concern over some of the behaviour of some of the banks, and in the end some of these people ended up losing their homes. Now, some of these were domestic situations like just house loans, but some of them were small business loans, and it got me involved in finding out a little bit more about what was going on. So when there was an opportunity to join one of the joint standing committees on the impaired bank loans, I took that opportunity, and then I had a lot more opportunity to look at what was going on. But I've always had this as a passion to try and find out what's been going on. Sometimes with a case-by-case study, it seems that there's been not a problem. But when you look at a whole suite and a whole range of different banks at a different level, there is a need for research on this. There is a need for some very deep questioning on this.
So do you think that the push for a Royal Commission was simply irresistible?
I'm not sure irresistible is the right word. I think the public perception right now out there is that this was the only alternative. As we've been saying for quite some time now, the Royal Commission is a long-term investigation, and I get that, but a lot of the people in the general public think that that is the only avenue. I'm happy that the Prime Minister and the Treasurer have decided on it, but I think that it's been a long fought for issue for everybody, because we know that there isn't necessarily going to be the compensation outcomes that some people expect. That'll be up to the legal fraternity. I'm just hoping that ultimately there's a better system, a better audited system, and that some of the heartbreaking stories that I've heard and have recorded and have taken forward to my colleagues occur less frequently.
You got a shout out from the Prime Minister today. He mentioned you specifically. What activities have you been doing behind the scenes to get the government to rethink this issue?
I've been trying to look at as strong an alternative to a Royal Commission with as much investigative power as possible, and having the same coercive responsibilities of getting evidence and the same search abilities, and having just as much legitimacy, just in case we could use a more accelerated form of investigation, which was ideally where we were headed. This has been a precipitated decision because the general population believes that this is the better alternative. So I think Malcolm and Scott have taken the right decision to make sure the general public feel more confident. As I understand it, the banks themselves have said, look, this needs to be done, and they're open for it. That's the Tier 1 banks. The next level down banking group are also very enthusiastic about it. I've been in discussion with some of them too. I think we have a great banking business in our nation, and we want to keep it that way, but there's some perceptions out there that there's some wrongdoing, and I have seen some evidence of some wrongdoing, and I'd like to see that aired. I'd like to see it prevented from ever happening again.
Do you think there's been political damage done to the Prime Minister and the government because it has taken so long?
Look, I think we're really trying to have a better alternative, and we have already brought in a lot of very, very significant changes. But when you bring in changes little bit by little bit, a lot of people don't understand those changes, and so the perception in the general public is, oh gosh, you're not doing anything. But really we are. We're doing a lot, but you need to be able to explain it to people so that they understand that the changes are really happening. This is the right path now. I think the general public will feel that they've been listened to, and it's been, for some people, a long time coming, for some people less. I've got businesses and families in my electorate who have already contacted me saying they're very, very pleased. And I think Malcolm and Scott should be congratulated for taking this decision. It's been a hard and difficult one because we've really tried not to have the long, drawn-out process of investigation. We'd rather have shorter, sharper ones with better results more quickly. But
Councillor Marlis, there's one issue that you've been particularly hot on. It was manipulated defaults, effectively whereby banks increase repayments beyond the comfort of or the capacity of their clients. How's this worked?
this has been quite a discovery for me, and I've been very concerned about it since I saw the evidence of it. And I'm so hoping that this comes out in the investigations, because prior to this it's been a case-by-case analysis. But when you look at a suite of loans that have been moved on in a particular industry, and this is my particular passion for the financial investigation, where we found about a third of the businesses, they really should never have been given a loan in the first place. This is some of the sub-tier banks that were taken over by bigger banks. About a third of them would have managed if they had had a little bit more flexibility in being able to repay their loans. But others were actually only given less than 24 hours notice, and the value of their assets was changed, and it made it incredibly difficult for them to negotiate a loan with somebody else, to get the transfer of title and get that going so that they could maintain themselves. And I think that was, I believe that was quite unfair, and I believe that an investigation will find a remedy for that is my dream, and justice for those potentially. That's not necessarily an outcome from a Royal Commission, we all know that, but it hopefully opens the door and lets people know that some of these things did happen. The banks have endeavoured to stop that from happening now, but there needs to be a study.
All right, now lastly on citizenship, you have been in Sydney today getting the last minute documents for ahead of this disclosure regime next week. What have you uncovered about your own citizenship or possibilities of problems?
Look, I have been cleared for quite some time, but my local media has been very unsure of the results that we've found and had legally analysed. That my mum's British, and they've been hounding me about my citizenship, but my dad is not and my grandfather is not. So what I came up here today is to get a copy of my father's birth certificate. My father is blind, and when I asked him to find the copy of his birth certificate, he said, "Anne, I've got pretty well no chance." His wife tried to find it and couldn't, so I've come up here today to get a copy of that so that I can have a complete clean slate on Monday and have all the evidence. And I also had to find information regarding my grandfather, whom I never met and actually left the family when my dad was about 11. So it's been an interesting journey, but I'm true blue Aussie.
Well, you're now learning a lot more about your family. Anne Sudmalis, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you.